Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. Apologies for being missing over the last 2 weeks, but I was struggling with Miley Cyrus, the virus. But now I'm back and healthy and everything's rocking. Tonight I want to talk about the universal laws. As you can see, I'm in a new location. It's a little bit of a secret location, and there'll be more about that following in future shows. Due to broadcast live from California in September, so I'm mixing it up a little bit. So let's talk about universal laws. Primarily, I want to talk about the law of attraction, as you know, because that's one of the things that I talk about with being present and vibration of the energy through the brain and the universal law. But as humans, we identify with the past and we catastrophize about the future. But we're also very particular about what we believe and what we don't believe. So, for example, let's look at the law of gravity. I think most people, if not all people watching this broadcast tonight, understand the law of gravity. So if a bridge collapses or a house collapses, or you drop a utensil or an item of food while you're cooking, we don't suddenly stop and think the law of gravity is not working or the law of gravity had nothing to do with that. We assume that things fall down due to the law of gravity. The law of electricity. We can't see it like we can't see gravity. But the law of electricity is a fundamental law. It's a universal law. It's always been there. The only way we get to use it or got to use it was because somebody decided that you get 1 point at one end, 1 point at another, make a connection, and we create an electric circuit. That circuit, we switch on and off with a light switch, or we switch on with a cooker switch, cooker hood switch. We connect that connection. If a light suddenly goes out, we don't blame the law of electricity because it's a universal law. It's there. There's something wrong with the light, or there's something wrong with the connection. The law of electricity still exists. In the law of attraction, it's very much like the law of electricity, where the mind is the one end of the circuit and the thoughts are the other end of the circuit. So it follows that whatever we think is the action of the mind creating that circuit. If we think about positivity, and I've mentioned this many times in the show before, we attract positivity. So the electrical circuit is very similar to what I talked about in a previous show, where the mind is like a magnet. You know, if you think back to early days at school, you play with two magnets. If you put ends together, one end will repel, the other end will attract. I realized that that's how the brain works, how my mind worked when I came back from my road trip in 2018. It's simply a different way of looking at something. So if we're thinking negatively, then we're going to attract negative energy. We don't think that the law of gravity fails. We don't think the law of electricity fails. So all other fundamental universal laws, the law of growth, things will continue through the universal law of growth. They'll continue to grow. How many times, put your hands up, I can't see you, but put your hands up. How many times have you gone to the store cupboard to get a potato to find that there's lots of roots growing out of it? You go to pick up a carrot and it started growing the nice green furry bit on the end that it actually needs to survive. So at times, what we would consider an inanimate object, like a potato or a vegetable, or whatever it might be, we leave that long enough, it still has the urge to grow. So as humans, we have that urge to grow, but we decide wrongly which parts of the universal laws we actually want to believe or we want to subscribe into. So the law of attraction is very much about being present, as I mentioned earlier. It's about mindfulness. It's about stilling the mind, but it's also about creative thinking. We are, as humans, creative beings. We like to create things. Everything in the room that you're in at the moment, or in the car if you're watching this on catch up, or wherever you might be, everything there started as a thought. the table I'm sat at, the laptop I'm using, the specifications of the laptop, the mobile phone I'm timing myself on, all started as a thought. Okay, so if we think about how the mind works, we start with the thought. If we start with the thought of creativity, we can plan a future, we can create the perfect life for ourselves. But by that creation, we need to think about it. I've recently started journaling. I have an affirmation board that I've had for 2 years now, and I look at that affirmation board every day. I journal every day, put those thoughts in writing. Again, that's a thing that's part of mindfulness. You have an idea, write it down. You have an emotion, write it down. If somebody says something to you, or you watch a movie or listen to a song and the way it makes you feel, write it down. This way we can focus on what we find enjoyable, what pleases us, what makes us happy. We need to embrace the present. We need to embrace now so that we can send out love, appreciation, gratitude, faith, hope, all positive emotions, which will then attract the same positive energy. The body will then vibrate at its universal level. This table I'm sat at, I mentioned earlier, the laptop I'm using, I mentioned earlier, they're simply atoms vibrating at a level that this three-dimensional body or my conscious mind can interpret as a table. But that's an interesting point, because I only call it a table because my parents told me that that's what it was called. So I don't really know that it's a table. It's just a bundle of atoms vibrating at a level that makes it feel solid. The legs are made of stainless steel. Again, vibrational energy that the mind, the conscious mind, can perceive that to be through the creative mind, through the conscious mind, can understand that that's a table. We go out into the forest, we tell the children that's a leaf. Well, it's not actually a leaf. It's what we know as a leaf. That's a tree. But we don't know the tree. The tree is just vibrating, which makes us see that vibration in this third dimensional 3D body that we are given for our consciousness. That's what we interpret as the common word for tree. So in terms of thinking, we take what we were given, we interpret that by our childhood, by what we've been taught to understand as certain things. The body vibrates, it's just a vibrating mass of energy. But we're told to think these things are a phone, a laptop, a table, a tree, a leaf. But what we need to do for success, for happiness, for health, is to take the stillness and focus on love, energy, happiness, abundance. How many people are struggling, especially with the world economy at the minute? We're all coming out of the virus, I should know. But we take all those things because we're bombarded with that kind of external stimulus, that kind of external energy. We're bombarded daily with all this kind of negativity. We all know about fake news. We all know about what's happening in other parts of the world where people are struggling and dying. So as a consciousness, to help the universe, to help the earth, to help the planet, we need to get into nowism, living in the present moment. We can't affect the future unless we do something about it now. There's no point catastrophizing about the future unless we put things in motion now. In terms of the law of attraction, it really simply is a fundamental law, a universal law, as I said, like gravity, like electricity, like growth, like abundance. The more we think of abundance, and as I was saying about, we've all struggled recently, we are all financially struggling. But the more we focus on that, we attract a lack attitude. So the universe gives us more lack. The more we get depressed about financial situations, about relationship situations, about what's happening in other parts of the world, the more we send out that energy of lack, we attract the same thing back. So by thinking abundance, by thinking love, by thinking enjoyment, guess what the universe is going to give you. I can give you a couple of examples. Running out of time, but I booked a vacation, cost me £2,500. Taking the wife and children on holiday, didn't know I was going to pay for it, didn't have the money to pay for it, but I booked it anyway. For the next 6 or 7 months, I was not concerned about how I was going to pay for it. I just knew I'd booked it, so I'd committed to it. Long story short, 2 weeks before we were due to fly, I received a payment which was exactly the same amount of money that I needed from a legal firm for the purchase of a house I'd made 2 years ago. So without worry, without anxiety, without fretting about the holiday, the universe provided the funds I needed. So in closing, hit me up on Long Road to Richmond. Website's coming out soon. Thanks for today. Thanks for tuning in. It's great to be back, and I look forward to speaking to you all next week. Take care.